Hi there. Oh, I've been up half the night thinking about this video, and I've got a bit of a headache now, so I don't know if I'll have enough energy even to talk about this. Antinatalism. Antinatalism is the belief that we should not have been born, and that therefore it is immoral to reproduce. And with classical Gnosticism, this has some metaphysical basis. Because, of course, as you probably know about Gnosticism, there is the belief that soul, which is pure, unconditional, obedient to God, beautiful, all good, is trapped in this veil of tears, which is this world. Um, Literally the valley of death, the place of suffering, hell, basically, and such pleasures as there are all to do with vanity taken at other people's expense. Altruism is egotism. It's a desperately depressing place and a depressing situation that we find ourselves in as soul. Not that soul actually really minds about all this. I think it's really our lower vehicles or our non-soul vehicles that are fed up with life and that we long for something different. But obviously, logically, it's wrong, it's immoral to bring more souls into this terrible world ruled by the terrible Demiurge. And so basically, we are imprisoned souls, and in this, I mean, basically, also it's a mistake. But I use that word mistake. Actually, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not really a mistake because the demiurge and the good God go back into infinity. Nothing caused these two entities to come into being, and the demiurge caused matter to come into existence, of course. So that's ruled by space and time. But the demiurge itself is beyond space and time, as is the good God. But we'll come on to this rather surprising bit of theology in another lecture, because it also contains references to the Parsi religion as well of India. Quite fascinating, really. So we'll leave that actually. But in this mistaken world, in the situation that we find ourselves in, our objectives are very, very minimal, actually. I mean, we are born into greed and fear. There's no doubt about that. And even the most alternative person is pretty stressed out and can get stressed out and can go into fear and greed and aggression and all the rest of it. None of us are actually immune from the effects of living in a world of scarcity, and a world where energy flows from us as well as towards us, where things go up and down, where value goes up and down, etc., etc., and a world of change. Think of the tarot card, the moon, and you'll get some idea of this world and what it's really like. Our objectives then are very. We just have to survive this world as best we can. We also have to cause minimal harm ourselves. We have to try to live simply that others might simply live, although that's a bit of a platitude, I have to say. We cause harm generally wherever we go, whatever we do, and we are we are waiting for transcendence. I say the word transcend here as if it's some kind of injunction. Transcend. We are waiting for the hand of Christ to descend from the clouds and literally pluck the soul from our situation and into the ineffable worlds above, above in quotation marks, of course. What we can do is spread the gnosis. We need to inform people of the situation that the soul finds itself in, and to say to people, you must cause minimal harm, and you must seek a transcendental solution. We also, but we also have to cultivate hope, I suppose, in the sense that there is a tendency to enter heaven because heaven is the soul's natural home. So we are. There is hope that Christ will deliver us, will save us from this evil world, and we need to spread that message of hope to people and trust in the Lord, and to spread and cultivate agape, which means unconditional love for the Lord, and unconditional faith and hope that Christ will deliver us from this evil world. And so therefore we have to, spontaneously introspect, as I've talked about before, contemplate the suffering of the world and go into meditation and seek the vision of the Holy Grail. So that's really all that we can do. It's not much, and yet it's probably quite a lot we can do in response, in fact, actually to this situation that we find ourselves in. And this, according to the movie The Matrix, this is the red pill. Okay, this is the when your eyes are opened to the world as it is, you're no longer distracted by beliefs, pastimes, addictions, pleasures, and things like that. You suddenly your eyes are opened unto the world. This is how it really is, as in the Matrix movie. This is, we are basically just in a prison. We are basically powering light bulbs with our human we are human batteries, and metaphorically speaking, of course, and or maybe not. But so anyway, without getting too paranoid about it and all that, it's actually quite a positive thing, really, because we are cultivating our introspection. To a degree, we're cultivating minimal harm to others and to the planet. We're living simply that others might simply live, all that kind of stuff. It's good stuff, it's hopeful stuff, it's positive stuff. But it is sort of opposed, as it were, by modern Gnosticism, which is basically using what they call the anthropogenesis model. Which basically is just a fancy word for saying you can improve yourself. So, you start off with there are various vehicles, mental vehicles, right? And you can clean these vehicles, purify these vehicles, like the foolish maidens and their lamps. You can keep them filled with oil. You can be prepared, prepare ye for the coming of the Lord, and all that. And this is anthropogenesis, really. It's sort of futurist. It's kind of based on left-hand path idea that that you develop homo virtuous, noble man in yourself, and of course the basic idea is that this world, evil as it is a schoolroom, and we are here to learn various lessons, and we're here to learn about ourselves and about how we tick and what pushes our buttons and what brings out the best in us and the worst in us and all this kind of stuff. We're here to take part in a great experiment of transformative alchemy, whereby the base metal is changed into gold within ourselves. So we are transformed. And the objective, I suppose, of life is to eat of the tree of life, which is to experience free will. I mean, at the end of the day, given all the suffering that confronts us, we are exercising our true will, whether to succumb to greed or fear, or whether to transcend greed or fear. So in the end, when we do get back to heaven, as we will do, because it's our natural tendency to do so, we will best appreciate, not better, but best appreciate heaven, having sort of reached this level of awareness, I suppose. And we've exercised our free will. We're in heaven because we want to be, basically. We're exercising our free will to partake of the goodness of God, not because we were made to do it, not because we didn't know any better, but having been in this terrible world, we now know better. We now exercise our free will. We're not going to be thinking what is grass like on the other side, you know. And so this is the basic idea of anthropogenesis, and perhaps anthroposophy as well, and theosophy as well. The theosophy has this idea of the monad, which starts off as a little rock, and then ends up as the Great White Brotherhood. You know, we're on a spiritual evolutionary journey, which is a kind of a theosophical point through reincarnation. And if you don't believe in reincarnation, then theosophy is a bit difficult to fathom or to make work, as it were. Anyway, that's theosophy. Rosicrucianism, the same. Lots of humanist religions, Ekankar, I suppose, the new religious movement, so-called, although it's been going for decades now. Even Scientology, I suppose, the humanist religion, or Scientology as it used to be anyway, before it got taken over by corporate interests, and so on and so forth. There are lots of different movements that have been going for decades, and some fizzled out in the 1970s and 80s. Granted, and some of them became corrupt, of course, and went in mad and did bad things. Bad things that actually arose from the logic of their argument, which is one of the problems with logic, is that you can have an argument and run with it, and run into egotism and vanity and pride and spiritual pride and all the rest of it, and think yourself superior to other people because you're on this sort of journey and because you're receiving some kind of initiatory energy. So all this. So I was going to completely I criticize modern Gnosticism, tear it apart, but then I suddenly thought, no, stop. Don't hold modern Gnosticism or anthropogenesis in such disdain, in such judgment. In fact, actually, it could even be a trick of the Demiurge to hold this kind of path in such judgment. I talked about surviving the Demiurge and surviving this world. I mean, it could be that the placebo effect of initiatory orders and, I don't know, transcendental meditation and all the things that people can do to better themselves and, you know, increase their awareness and consciousness and, you know, make all these things, integrate Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll, though in fact you can't actually do that, but never mind, you can think that you can do it. I mean, basically you are sort of putting on the t-shirt, you're the lion putting on the t-shirt which says courage on it, really. Courage, mon ami. So the whole of this anthropogenesis kind of program or model, it is morale boosting. It makes you survive. It makes you, because you could go into terrible despair, you know, and guilt and maudlin panics and paranoia, and, you know, and see the Demiurge everywhere, and Demiurge and his agents and his devils, and I don't know, you could get really, really kind of mentally sick, actually. You know, you could program your mind to become terribly fearful, and terribly greedy for some kind of solution, existential solution to all this terrible mess that we're in. And get yourself involved in mad cults and God knows what, like, you know. But nevertheless, you know, things like Rosicrucianism are part of our survival kit, part of what makes us able to bear living in this world, as well as living morally, and as well as cultivating hope within ourselves that Christ is the answer and that Christ's hand will descend to pluck us out of this terrible situation that we're in. But certainly as about antinatalism, having children, it would seem, you see, the thing about it, though, is that if you believe that this world is not much, is a prison rather than a classroom. I mean, if you believe this world is a classroom, then if more babies are born, if more souls come into this world, that's not such a great bad thing, is it? You know, because there's a chance here for transformation to occur, and for people to find their way home to heaven. You know, you start off with heaven and you go down into the lower worlds, you can go back to heaven. This sort of U-shaped figure that we might have. or might envisage as being the spiritual path. So if the world is a spiritual path, if the world is a classroom, if we're here to better ourselves, to return to heaven with free will and with knowledge and experience, and what knowledge and experience has taught us about ourselves and about fear and greed, then then it doesn't matter getting pregnant, you see. But if you believe this world is a prison, then indeed having children would seem to be a rather immoral, irresponsible, and pertaining to the actual Demiurge himself. Really, you're creating a life, you're imprisoning a soul, you're almost reflecting the activity of the Demiurge himself. So you're actually entering into the evil of the Demiurge, as it were. But I think that possibly we can live with both views, actually, rather weirdly enough. But I mean, on the practical level, I would say to you, don't get pregnant. Don't imprison another soul in this terrible world. But on the other hand, if you do get pregnant, all is not lost, and you should not have an abortion. You should carry the baby to term. And if you can't look after the baby, all right, but you give it to somebody else to look after. But if you can look after the baby, then that's all and well and good. And then, basically you are seeing the world as a classroom for your child. And they're going to grow up and have lots of experiences, good and bad and indifferent. They're going to experience ugliness, beauty, good and evil. And, you could say, well, from these experiences, self-knowledge will arise. But I do think really, I mean, I was going to say this is the blue pill, to refer to the Matrix movie. Wake up and believe whatever you want. This is the ultimate distraction, to think that anything you can get better within a world that is absolutely arrayed against you getting better at all. And if you're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, well, Mr. Hyde is not going to go away. You're not going to banish Mr. Hyde. You're not going to integrate Mr. Hyde into yourself. You are just surrounded by enemies. You're the cat surrounded by the Rottweilers, like in the picture that goes viral sometimes on the social media, always a ring of Rottweilers and a little cat in the middle, and that's your soul. Well, that's not your soul. That's the part of you which longs to get back to heaven. It's a little cat surrounded by all these Rottweilers that are going to tear it to bits, and this is what you're up against, you see. So I think you can literally have these two opposing views of the world as part of your spiritual toolbox, I would say. But don't be under any illusions. I mean, I think that basically the souls that are already here, already have a terrible task on their hands just to survive being here without going mad and shooting everybody. Going out in the street and shooting people like they do in America. You become aware of your terrible situation and you just shoot your way out of it. Well, that's not the answer. The answer is to go within or go without, and to go, have the spontaneous introspection, cultivate that, which isn't so much a method or a prayer exactly. It's a sort of state of mind that you can just spontaneously go into and have the vision of the Holy Grail, and from that derive some hope that Christ will save us from this damnable place, and damned place, I suppose. Well, not damned, but certainly damnable. We'll come on to that in another video, whether it's damned or damnable. Anyway, so I thought I would leave it there. There's quite a lot of points to pick up on here, really. And perhaps this video has done nothing more, really, than raise questions and be a springboard for either discussion or your further contemplation.